So if you have been attending our Sangha for a while, you know I'm a big fan of the convergence and the overlap between the ancient teachings of the Buddha and modern psychology. And it just fascinates me how modern psychology keeps rediscovering or thinks they think they've discovered for the first time what the Buddha taught and how they reaffirm it with modern research and perspective. So today I want to talk a little bit about a relatively new area of psychological research and how it um, overlaps with the Buddha's teachings. This is an area of inquiry known as growth mindset, and it's developed by psychologist Carol Dweck. And it's the belief that abilities and intelligence can be developed beyond our baseline with dedication and hard work. Now, that sounds like common sense, but she really goes deeper into it, and she and her colleagues. And the overarching conclusion that she's reached is that individuals with a growth mindset who cultivate a growth mindset see challenges as opportunities for growth rather than obstacles to be avoided. Too often, humans come up against a challenge and we shrink from it. And she says, and her research confirms that if we see these challenges as opportunities for growth, then this encourages resilience, persistence, and willingness to learn from failures, all of which, she doesn't say this directly, but all of which can reduce our suffering and our frustration. And here's where it gets interesting in terms of Buddhist teachings, because she emphasizes the idea that our personality is not fixed, but can be cultivated through effort and perseverance. Now, that might sound familiar to you because it's really like the Buddhist teaching on non-self or anatta. You will recall that anatta is one of the three marks of existence that the Buddha taught, the other two being impermanence, anicca, and suffering, dukkha. He said, no self, impermanence, and dukkha were the three marks of existence. And anatta refers to this doctrine of no self, suggesting that there's no permanent, fixed, unchanging self that any of us carry around. Back to Dweck's work, where she said we don't have a fixed personality or fixed self. And according to the Buddha's teachings, the self is this construct that we form through the interplay of factors such as our consciousness, our feelings, our perceptions, mental formations, body sensations. We throw that all in the hopper, we mix it up, and out comes this ever changing, ever evolving thing we call ourself or our personality. And all of these elements, I need not tell you, are impermanent. They're constantly changing, and but the ego demands that we kind of overlook that and create this illusion of a stable and enduring self. That this Jeff is the same Jeff all the time. Each of you is the same all the time because that's kind of the ego wants to put us in a nice box. But but understanding non-self, the teaching of non-self, whether from modern psychology or Buddhist teaching, helps us with the realization of the interconnectedness and interdependence of all things, as well as it gives us some hints about the alleviation of suffering because it opens some doors for us. And it does this by encouraging us to let go of our attachments, let go of our fixed identity, and really embrace the fluidity of existence, really embrace the ever changing nature of it. And again, because most of us like predictability and we like familiarity, we kind of shrink from that. We don't like to think of this as constant flow. We want things to be kind of solid and firm, but it's an illusion. And like this attachment that we have to avoiding failure at all costs rather than learn from them, because failure feels like it diminishes us. We feel ashamed of our failures. We feel inadequate. But because we're attached to avoiding failures at all costs rather than embracing them and learning from them the way Dweck suggests in her research. While the Buddhist teachings and work on growth mindset may seem different at first glance, they share these common themes of personal growth, impermanence, and the transformative power of perspective, of seeing this perspective of this ever-changing, ever-evolving existence that we all live. So practicing a growth mindset involves acknowledging the potential for change, acknowledging the development for oneself, and um, really working with it, really bringing it into our daily lives. Just like the concept of non-self in Buddhism invites us to let go of fixed notions of identity and embrace the ever-changing nature of our existence. This concept is sometimes a little elusive, but I think if we really think about it in terms of, this constant flow of existence and experience, it certainly helped me understand it. And I think both of these perspectives offer valuable insights into personal positive change in the true nature of reality. That's where they start to overlap. And further, growth mindset refers to the belief that our abilities and our intelligence and our coping and all of that can be developed through commitment, dedication, and hard work. Now, um, this contrast with this mindset of this fixed self, which says our abilities are static traits, we're kind of stuck with them, they can't really be improved. And Dweck's work, as does the Buddhist teachings, really flies in the face of that. In Buddhism, the concept of non-self refers to the view, as I said, that there's no permanent, integral, fixed self. The self is seen as a conventional term that refers in Buddhism to the impermanent composite of physical and mental factors. And when we really accept and see this, and really see the reality of this, we overcome attachments and suffering caused by the clinging to the notion of a permanent self. When I'm clinging to the notion of a permanent self and something happens or I do something which deviates from that, I'm likely to either avoid it, condemn it, feel ashamed of it, or whatever. So there's a lot of suffering when we cling to this fixed self. And the Buddha understood that. If I don't have to cling tightly to a fixed notion of being some type of person, let's say an admirable person, oh, I'm always a good person. If I don't have to hold on to that, I can drop the mask that we talked about a couple months ago and accept myself, flaws and all. And as much as we might want to shrink from that, there's tremendous freedom in that. And it also opens up the opportunity to confront and address those flaws. I mean, I don't have to hide them, run from them, avoid them, pretend they're not there. And I experience a relaxed, freer way of being in the world. It really brings an ease with it because I'm able to say, this is all of me, warts and all. The growth mindset school emphasizes malleable abilities through effort. And this aligns with the Buddha's notion that the self is not fixed, immutable, but rather an impermanent, ever-changing, and changeable process. So without knowing it, I think Dweck and her colleagues have really reaffirmed the Buddha's early teachings on this notion of non-self. And when I first came across it, Dweck's work, I thought, here we go again. Once again, modern psychology is figuring out what the Buddha understood 2,600 years ago. Now, in fairness, there is some different emphasis here. I mean, one is a psychological model about developing abilities. The other is a foundation, philosophical view about the nature of existence and identity within the Buddhist teaching. So, I mean, obviously, they come from a little different place, one from sort of a modern scientific model, one from a more philosophical ancient model. But what they have in common is a view that the self is not fixed, it's ever changing and changeable and available to modify through our practice in the teachings. Often people, and I'm going to talk about this in an upcoming talk, we've been talking about this recently too. We get stuck in thoughts such as, I'm not good at anything, I always strike out, everyone does better than me, and so forth. And we become convinced that we can't learn anything new, we can't get out of that rut. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's too late for me to try because I'm going to fail anyway, and so forth and so on. We feel we struggle so much with our task. We feel inferior by the easy success of people around us. We compare ourselves, but this is often a fixed belief that we hold on to. And we repeat it in the stories we tell ourselves, we repeat it in our actions, and it continues to follow us around like a dark cloud. It's an example of the fixed belief in who one is that the Buddha told us causes so much suffering. So whether we look into the research in terms of Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset, or we look at the ancient teachings of the Buddha on this notion of a firm fixed self, the result is suffering in both instances. It's just another layer of stuff that causes suffering. The good news is that both growth mindset and practical Dharma from the Buddhist teachings offer ways to reduce the suffering. And that primary way is by embracing this notion of an ever-changing, flexible, fluid self. And if we explore either or both approaches, as we talk about here so often, might we be more effective in reducing our suffering even more by letting go of this fixed self? So that's thoughts for today. Let's get your perspective on it.